Hey, nurse bosses. We are back with yet another episode of the Nurse Boss Shift, where shift happens. Today, we get the pleasure of interviewing Melanie of Nomadic Nurse Agency. Melanie started this agency out of a need that she saw from COVID. She had dabbled into nurse entrepreneurship before, but her eyes were now open to looking around her and seeing where she can help a void in her community. And that is exactly what she did. The great thing about Melanie is that she's all the way up there in Canada, but she still deals with some of the same issues that we deal with in the States as far as nurse burnout and also just using her resources to get to the next step. Melanie takes us through her journey of starting her first business, which led into her next business, and how she was able to easily scale that business, and it is now on autopilot. She is now working as manager of a couple of hospitals up where she lives, and she is thinking about taking the business that she built up in Canada and bringing it here to the States because there's even more earning potential. And as we know, as nurse entrepreneurs, we are definitely in this to make money so that we can have more freedom and more time with those who matter to us, like our friends and family. So while she has a heart for helping people in her community, which is definitely displayed as she talks about the business that she started, she is still about her coins and knows that the only way to get to the next level and to secure financial freedom is through nurse entrepreneurship. So if you have been thinking about starting a business and you think for some reason you can't do it, well, go ahead and listen to this episode and see how Melanie has pushed past all the excuses she could have given herself and has created a successful business that she can take internationally and create the same business model all the way here in the States. Stay tuned for this episode. You definitely don't want to miss it.
Welcome you guys to the Nurse Boss Shift podcast. It's your girl, Dr. Kiiyonna Jones.
And I'm Christal P, the Beauty NP.
And we are welcoming Melanie here to us. First of all, before we get started with Melanie, let me give a little disclaimer. I'm hoarse, y'all, but I'm still showing up, and that's all that matters. I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is kind of gone. But Melanie, welcome. The owner of, tell me the name of your business again.
Nomadic Nurse Agency.
Nomadic Nurse Agency. I love that. Let's have you do a little brief introduction to yourself.
So my name is Melanie. I have been a nurse for 10 years now, and as of June, so that's crazy. 10 years have flew by. I'm a bachelor's nurse. I'm from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. My experiences comes from emergency trauma originally. So I've been an emergency nurse since the jump, got out of nursing school, decided to throw myself in the shark tank. And I also have experience in psychiatry as well. And when I was running during my time in after school and I was graduated, I was in the middle of getting my bachelor's degree. I decided I wanted to do something more than the shift work at the hospital. As much as I loved it, I realized that the emergency room is quite a heavy location mentally on and physically on nurses in general. So I said, you know what, I need to diversify my platform. So that's when I created tutoring services and mentorships, and then we evolved to Nomadic Nurse Agency in 2019. And it's been a crazy battle, crazy times. We provide mobile nursing services at home, such as COVID testing. Well, at the time, COVID testing, it was a big one.
Yeah.
We do blood tests, ear cleanings, injections, vaccines, and so on.
Okay.
And we've been in business ever since.
I love that. So nomadic is just the travel part, right? So you basically are going at where your clients are. So that's a little bit different than like a home health business because it's like you're testing, right? So talk a little bit about that and the difference in it.
Absolutely. So what we do primarily is because Quebec has a very different clientele and their needs are different. We do have socialized medicine here, but focuses a lot on treating illness rather than preventing. And in what costs our taxpayers money a lot is treating the illness. We have to go down. So we try to promote the promotion of health and preventing illness as much as possible by, making sure that our clients have accessibility to blood tests, which unfortunately is very difficult to access in Quebec. Getting their vaccines up to date, getting their education, and so on and so forth. We try to also work with other clinics as well that have accessibility to doctors, GPs that can see people in the clinics, because unfortunately GPs are not very accessible in Quebec as well. We do our very best to try to meet that link and not only increase accessibility, but also come at an affordable rate as well.
Okay, that's amazing. And how does that work with, because I know in Canada there's socialized medicine, right? So everyone, well, we think everyone has free healthcare. That's what it's promoted at. But is it truly free healthcare, or how are people paying for your services? Is it still like an insurance type thing, or are they out of pocket cash pay?
So it's a very good question. So we do with the when they meet with GPs and certain doctors, they do have things that are covered on Medicare, which is the socialized medicine aspect. But when we take our services directly, like the blood test, the vaccines, they have to pay for it, and it can be covered by insurance as well, depending on the policy of each client.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, not everybody has insurance, but some people, entrepreneurs, can declare this on income tax as well. People, this is something that some people are need to be more educated about in our province.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because it's funny when you were talking about sick care system. That's what we say out here in the States for sure.
Mhm.
And I guess ignorantly I always assumed that that wasn't the case there, because like she said, universal health care, everybody in my mind, you guys are paying more taxes, but everyone gets access to health care. But obviously there's still a void in some places. And so essentially your business is helping to minimize that void for a lot of people. Is that right?
Absolutely, but keep in mind, this is the province of Quebec, and Quebec is a very special province compared to, the other, provinces, so,
Okay.
I don't know what state we could compare it to that's so isolated and different than the other ones, but
Alaska.
Quebec.
Yeah.
Alaska, very good. So let's compare it to Alaska. So, I'm like, speaking of Alaska is next to Canada, so here we
Right.
go. Alright, but pretty much, it's very it's we are very, like, French here, like, I do speak English, but I also speak French, I do
I got
understand
you.
Creole, but big thing is French here, and,
Ah.
the rest of Canada is bilingual in from French and English, but primarily it's English, and they do have a different system, like, in another province called Alberta, their
Mhm.
healthcare system works perfectly for them, and they don't have to do
Mm.
a two-tiered system like we do, where we have to have, privatized and stuff, and plus we pay a lot in taxes here in Quebec, and it's very, very hard, to see where this is all distributing, but,
Mhm.
I mean, the best thing that we can do is try to increase accessibility and promote
Right.
health as much as possible, and that was a big thing, a big discussion during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so as a nurse, were you able to see high level the disproportionate access, and then is that why you started your business, or what made you decide to go into this business?
So when I worked in emergency, I worked in triage and the ambulatory care section. So ambulatory care in our emergency room is pretty much like a just you come for it's like little urgent care section in
Mhm,
our
mhm,
emergency room. So it's like if you need
mhm,
stitches, you need you have a UTI that needs to be treated. Like
mhm,
we
mhm,
don't have anything really called urgent care. It's just
mhm.
emergency room, and that's it.
Okay.
So when I started working in there, I did like my own little market research while I was in there, and I was
Mhm,
working in triages and stuff. And I'm like, my God, there's so many things that the clients or people or patients are coming in and they don't know that they have resources to, and it's just it was insane how there was such a need. I'm like, for example, I had one night I was working triage and it was like an evening shift going from like it was at 7:30 p.m. I think I had like three women come in with UTI symptoms, like minor UTI symptoms, and I said, well, did you know you can do XYZ? And each one of them was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. But it did
mm,
come to a point that at one point, they did know, and there wasn't accessible anymore, so they had to wait
mm,
because
mhm,
of the issues of the pandemic, but before that, oh my gosh, like, so many people had no idea what they could do with their resources, and
mm.
that's a big issue in Quebec of understanding our resources, and keep in mind, our resources, a lot of the times, are covered by our Medicare in other words, free or tax
Mhm,
covered. So you
mhm.
can use them as you go. But lately I have to admit, it has been more and more of inaccessibility, regardless of, um, regardless of how many resources are out there. And but we still try to, pile up and increase that resources as much as possible.
Did you say that you started, this might be changing the topic, but you started with helping other nurses at first, and then you built on the, patient side? How did that
Yes,
how
absolutely.
did that transition?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was super different. So you guys have the NCLEX in the US, which I'm studying for right now, which is so much easier than studying for the Order of Nurses of Quebec exam, because our
Oh,
exam is,
wow.
if you think the new generation exam of the NCLEX is tough, I'm studying it right now to come to the US. The OIQ exam is so much harder because
Wow.
it's yeah, what's crazy, what makes it hard, it's like, can you think like a Quebec nurse? Like, not think like a nurse, like, is this, or can you fit in Quebec? That's just the way it is over here. Anyways.
Mhm.
But, but when I started getting to this, it took me 3 times to do that exam. NCLEX, you have as many chances as you want. You have 3 times, and if you fail in the 3rd shot, you're no longer a nurse, you have to go back to nursing school. That's how it works here. So,
Oh.
do you understand the fire underneath my backside when I realized, I'm like, I'm on my 3rd shot and this is it, and it
Uh-huh.
didn't make me less of a nurse, because I still worked in the emergency room during that time frame, and my boss was like, I was very adamant with honest with my boss, I'm like, I failed again," and she went like, "You're not going nowhere. You are good at your job. You're really good at
Mm.
your job. You're not going nowhere. You're gonna stay here. If I saw that you were dangerous on the field, 100% you would have been gone. We would discuss this. But that's
Yeah.
not your issue. You're having a hard time adapting to this exam." And keep in mind, during the time that I was doing it, there were so many changes to the exam. Like, every time I had to do it, there was a new update, new change. Get rid of this, add this. Like, so I
Mm.
had to roll with the punches until one day I got it. And because of that, I decided to mentor nurses and
Yeah.
prepare them for this licensing exam and for the nursing
Mm.
assistants as well. I just found there was a void there as well in regards of education and helping nurses on that angle.
Yeah. So you went
Nice.
from so you initially started with like tutoring nurses for
Yep.
your exam in Quebec, and then that led you into starting your other business, or are they kind of one and the same?
They're one and the same. So pretty much, like, it started off like I got my inspiration from from my business inspiration from starting the tutoring. I'm like, listen, I could scale this. And then I
Mhm.
started scaling it there. And then all of a sudden, when the pandemic happened, um, the nursing students, it was a little bit different to care for the exams and stuff, because there's a lot of difficulties in managing, and anyway, so it became very challenging for me to make a bit scale that part of the business at that time. You'd think it would be
Mhm.
easier, but it actually got harder. So a lot of nurses ended up, using my tools, but then after it became there was a lot of challenges in regard and changes in the exam again. So it became less scalable during the pandemic. But what really scaled and really took a nice lift off was the fact that people were like, we need home service. We need someone to come to our home, because we don't want
Yeah.
to. The blood taking centers are closed. The COVID testing centers are. We're afraid to go, or we rather pay, or we rather do other things. Like, so we ended up. So because I saw a change in the market there, that's when I started to pivot. And I was okay with that pivoting at that time. And I still help nurses and nursing students on the side in the mentorship and everything. And
Mhm.
but again, I would do a lot of referrals with other companies at that time that I trusted very well.
Mm. Now, did what? Okay, so your testing agency, I mean company, is that considered a nursing organization? Like, did you have to? Do you have to have a medical director there, or is it strictly nursing? That's within your scope out there, and you don't need a medical doctor.
So it's within our scope. We do not need a medical director for this. We just need to operate and that's it, because the task is strictly nursing. If I started doing IV drip therapy, I would need a medical director. But in
Mhm.
Quebec, IV drip therapy, unfortunately, because I love your business, by the way, ladies. I love the IV drip therapy idea. I think it works super, super well if used correctly, and I'm sure you guys are
Yes.
using it
Yeah.
to the T. In Quebec, unfortunately, it's not something that is very looked upon positively by our order of doctors. So
Oh.
doctors that are covered under the Medicare system, because it's technically making money off the backs of healthcare, the order of doctors, the Collège de médecins, as we call it in French, they are opposed to this option unless the doctor is very involved in private care specifically, and even at that, they have a
Mm.
hard time because
Yeah.
in order for in their eyes, the way they see it, in order for you to prescribe a vitamin drip therapy that has vitamin B12 in there, you got to do a blood test that shows that they're deficient.
Mhm,
But not all
mhm,
the time are they really
mhm,
deficient in the blood work. They're low. It's not sufficient for their baseline. Like for example, I'll take vitamin B12 every day, but it's not because I'm deficient. It's because it
mhm,
helps me boost my energy and helps with
mhm.
my
Yeah,
own well being.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really because, I mean, a lot of holistic and wellness services, um, science, like the science of medicine, they don't like that. They really are designed to treat sick people. And so when you get into the wellness space and holistic medicine, it doesn't matter if science has proven that it's effective. It's just not the system which we exist. And that's why it's not taught a lot. Like they want you to focus on the science, they want you to focus on medicine, medicine,
Mhm.
medicine, medicine. It doesn't matter. And we still are challenged with that. And some states are more strict than others, right?
Yeah.
But even medical doctors here are, I would say, they're more open to it, just because you can't deny what the research says, and they're just going on the medical research. And like, if it's not fixed, why broke? If it's not broke, why fix it? But the reality is, it takes people a long time before they start showing symptoms of vitamin deficiency. It doesn't just happen overnight,
Yeah.
especially women and things like that. So I get it, because some states are like that too, where they're not having it. They're not.
Mm,
So, okay, so you started your business. You went through a series of, like, okay, you started it. And what I love, and this is really true to a nurse entrepreneur, is like we
yeah.
start one place, we don't know where
Mhm.
we're going to end up. Like I started, and I always tell my story. I started in like trying to help homeless people, in a nonprofit, with a nonprofit. Then from there, I did a staffing agency, and then from there, I did like my non-medical beauty business where I did like permanent makeup and all these different things, and then added on aesthetics. Crystal story is
Yeah.
similar, just
I do
something totally
product.
different.
Yeah.
I really think it's about, though, and a lot of people don't realize this. They always, not always, a lot of people, and I'm generalizing, want to know the end destination, and that is still to be written, right?
Mm,
But I think the level of courage it takes to step out, even on that first one, and then
Mm.
find the value in it, even if it's not something you continue to do or whatever, to be able to see, like, all right, this was something good, and then to be able to identify the next need that you're feeling. So what was that process like for you, Melanie?
Oh, wow, the transitioning of
Mhm,
business, it's
mhm,
from business from 1 to business 2
mhm,
was such an interesting one. I mean, I'm still doing business 1, like, it's still in progress, but it's just, taken a different type of lift off, and I'm I just appreciate that the learning opportunity from it.
yeah,
It was the pandemic that swung so much for me in regards of like, okay, what's the void now? Where do I put people where does people need me more now? And when I figured what that was, that's what I gravitated to because my goal
mhm,
originally was to help people during the pandemic and try not to decrease accessibility of healthcare resources during the pandemic. It was a huge, huge thing here, and I'm sure it was like this in the US and all around the world. And it was something that I really looked I felt like this was a dire need for people. The people, nurses needing the OIQ exam prep, I referred out. I was able to find a resource for them, and I was
Mhm.
okay with that. But when it came down to what was going on in the pandemic, where everyone was losing accessibility, this is when I said, you know what, like let's start get this going. And besides, and also another thing that I do, I forgot to mention, is that we put nurses in pharmacies as well. So they'll do nursing service inside of pharmacies in Quebec. So they'll do their other injections and stuff like that. So that would be even more profitable, more cost
Mm,
efficient for clients,
mhm,
and they can come to the location, and that way they're not, instead of paying $60 or $80 for an injection plus the cost of the vaccine, they'll come in and pay 10. So, and it gives the
mhm,
pharmacy some more leverage for people, for more clients. It gives them more transactions. So it ended up being a win-win on that angle. And that, because my pharmacies at the time were suffering because of that cut of during the pandemic, that's why I said, okay, we're going to do mobile. And then that's when we teamed up with our pharmacies as well.
okay.
Now, on the
So
logistics side of this, and just for nurses listening and maybe who are thinking, hey, I could do something like that. Did you start with like just make an appointment and I'll drive to you? Did you have a van? How did that part of it look with going to client's house? How did you get them? And then how did you carry out the services?
Very good question. So, marketing is a big thing. And
Yes.
I realized that if I wasn't a nurse, I would love to do marketing. And if I wasn't into marketing, I would do law. And one thing that I loved was understanding the laws of business and like, okay, what do we need to do here? How do we do it properly? And then I just got whirlwinded into it. But when it came down to getting my clientele, I was on social media all the time. And because at one point, that's all you were able to do.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
if so, where was people all the time at during the moment of of the pandemic? On their phone all the
Yep.
time. So, I took the time and I went on social media, I did a couple of stories, and I started with educational stories. I started with saying, like, "This is what you do if you how to use a mask, how to use this, how do you wash your hands," things like that. I did very simple things that, to me, working in the emergency room was something very common, but to people, they're like, "Oh, wait, I don't know how to do this," and I ended up answering so many questions, and because of that, I ended up scaling that component, and then from there, that's when I started offering a little bit of a hotline saying, "Hey, do you guys need help with something? You give me a call." And we ended up answering some questions in regards to that. People felt reassured and felt like they were getting proper education. And again, this was also a no judgment zone as well, based on people's decisions. We had to make sure that everything was as open and welcoming as possible, and the marketing aspect was purely on social media, and it was a huge hit. It really worked out well with the education component, and then I started going to people's houses in my car that I still have today. um, I've been going house to house,
Yeah.
and then after that I had to grow a team. So a team has grown from there, because I couldn't do
Yeah.
all these things by myself.
No.
Yes. So, okay, now let's get into the financial aspect. Are you still working in the ED? Are you a full-time entrepreneur? Where are you at right now?
So right now I am, because of my new plans,
Mhm,
I
mhm,
right now I am a hospital manager. So basically what we call it, nurse resource manager at our hospital. So I'm in charge of one of the biggest hospitals in the province,
okay.
and it's under McGill University Health Center, and we provide we're and I'm pretty much the manager of three big hospitals. So the Neurological Institute of Montreal, the Montreal General Hospital, which is our trauma center, and the Glen Institute, which is our very specialized center, health center. And basically, any patients that go up to the floor, any patients that have to get certain procedures done, I'm the honcho in charge type of thing. So I took a really big job, and I do enjoy the job. It's a very different job. I had to pull myself out of the ED for that job, but I think it was a good time. Based on timing, it was a great experience, and I still have my company rolling pretty much like a conveyor belt, which is the beauty of it. It's able to
Ooh,
run on its own, and I'm available for it as I'm doing other things. So it's
Love
great.
that.
autopilot. That's
Yes.
always great.
Yes.
So you essentially created this business from scratch based on the need that you identified. Then you worked the
Mhm.
business to find out how to run it. Then you
Mhm.
delegated it in certain aspects of it. And I'm sure you have some kind of automations in place as well, right? I always say delegate and automate whenever you can. And then you have people working it. So
Yeah.
doing this business, and I know you're in Quebec, and so it may be a little different, but is it bringing in the revenue? What's the average amount that a business like this can bring in um,
So
for over
the
annual?
thing so annually, you can bring in 6 figures easily, but the issues where you get cut with is the taxes. The taxes here, it's
Oh,
50%.
Ugh.
It is
oh,
heavy.
that's right. I don't know why I thought it was 30%.
It
50.
here, it's 40, it depending on your tax bracket, you're hitting 50%, like, give or take, 42 to 50%. Yeah, it's heavy. But again, you end up like, your lifestyle ends up being paid by the business, everything becomes an expense, everything that I did, every
Yeah.
business meeting I had, expense, because that you need to show that you're spending that money, investing it back
Yeah.
into your company, which
Yes.
is
Yes, for
you have
sure.
to have a really good accountant, and you have to have some really good, like, skills in regards to figuring out the financial component of it,
Yeah.
and, you can run your 6 figures, but the issue that I have with that is, um, it's not gonna be anywhere near as what you can make in the US, and I'll tell you this because, um, we pay 50% on our taxes already,
Mhm,
give or take.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Everyone's different in that angle,
Right.
that based on the tax bracket,
Mhm.
but at the same time, not everyone's gonna have insurance, and you gotta pay upfront and then get covered on insurance. So,
Mm.
and if you're paying that much in taxes, it doesn't become very appealing to people to wanna pay all upfront, and we as Nomadic Nurse Agency understand that. That's why we still try to make it affordable as much
Yeah.
as possible, but again, our
Mhm.
lab fees are our lab fees,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the best that we can do, and my nurse needs to cover her gas. We need to make sure that we're not going into the negatives or at par. We have to make some money in order for us to keep things running, and I can have an
Yeah.
admin staff, and the thing is that, Quebec isn't under necessarily there yet to understand private healthcare and how we are getting there.
Yeah.
Ontario is getting onto that road, but Quebec is having a hard time in that matter. Montreal is doing good, but, the rest of Quebec is a very tough shell to break when it comes down to that. So, the money in Quebec, I have to admit, is not as entertaining as what you would see in the US and what my friends have made in the US and other companies,
Mm. So are you,
is how we're making more.
do you have plans to move your business, or are you trying to come to the States and start it, or what are your plans
Yes.
for that? Okay.
My plans is to come to the US, it's in the works right now. I have my NCLEX to write, which I'm cannot wait to get that done. I cannot wait,
Yeah.
but I have to work through a lot of crooks and crannies, so that's what I'm doing right now, but, I'm
Yeah.
applying through the state of Florida, because I
Okay.
have family out there, so I'm gonna start there first. I know it's not the highest paying over there, but I have a base there, so, I have
Mhm.
no problem getting started. I actually did get an offer through California at one point, which was I'm gonna take up eventually, but I'm gonna establish the company, I think we're gonna see where it lands, but for now, I got a travel nurse opportunity in Florida that I'm gonna take, and we're gonna take it from there, and Nomadic
Yeah.
Nurse is nomadic, so that's the beauty of it,
Yes,
right?
I right?
exactly. I love that.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, you can do it anywhere. And I love that you mentioned that you have friends who are already out here doing it. And we follow a couple of like influencers who also um basically help people start point of care testing out here. But what I feel like is just even hearing you talk and compared to just the average nurse entrepreneur, it just takes a person who's willing to bet on themselves and to dare to do and become something that they don't know about. They just are kind of stepping and figuring it out as they go, one step at a time. And then identifying like areas that you can grow from and improve from, like whether it's, like I said, systems, automations, having people work for you. I don't know if you ever owned a business before, but most nurses haven't. And I think it's just once you get a taste of it, it's like you just, how can you go back to, even though you're working a lot, because it's not something that, I know you said it's on autopilot, but initially it does require a level of commitment, um, even when you don't see like a profit. And so, what
Yeah.
did you experience that? And like, how did you get through that?
I prayed. I
Yeah.
I learned like, please God, like I hope something comes out of this for me. But
Yeah.
again, when you're doing something good, good will always return. Because at the
Hmm.
end of the day, you got to remember, and I've been seeing this on and off again throughout like my years. And one thing is that you can't have wealth if you don't have passion. You have to have passion in order for you to have wealth. And that's the
Mm,
most important thing. If your passion is not on fire, you will not see the money. And it's very important that you enjoy what you do and you do it with good intention. Because if
yeah.
your intention is negative, I promise you, you will have a negative outcome. Because
Right.
I know so many companies that had negative intention of just the fact of, I just want wealth, I just want money. When you go into that intention, not a lot of the times it's very easy to get trapped in ways of getting money in ways that you're not supposed to or not in the nice ways. And I've seen a company
Mhm.
do that
Mhm,
actually.
mhm, mhm.
And they're facing lawsuits. It's the way it is,
Yeah.
and it's not even another nurse that owns it. So
Mhm.
it's something to be very well aware of when you're going into business. Do it with positive intention. You're gonna see an outcome with your passion, I promise. You
Yeah.
just have to be consistent with the work. You gotta be consistent with the work, and again, you gotta be okay with taking breaks too, but again, don't give up. Breaks are okay, but don't give up.
Mhm,
There's a
mhm.
difference.
Yeah, for sure. So the next thing we was going to ask you, Melanie, is like, our community is of nurses and we would like for you to give some homework. Like, what do you think three things that you've done? It could be high level, like it could be a book you suggest, whatever, that you recommend for our people. Now, we have people who are entrepreneurs who maybe need a little push to keep going, maybe they're in a rut, and we have people who've never been entrepreneurs, they're nurses, and they have no idea of even how to begin. So, any part of the journey, like three things that you would recommend them taking action on today when they listen to this podcast.
One thing I found was super helpful is find a mentor. You cannot do it alone. You need to find a mentor. You got to find someone you look up to. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone in the nursing business per se, but it's got to be someone that's in business that you resonate with. My mentor
Yeah.
is somebody who is in event planning. Like
Yeah.
completely different industry, but anytime I need her, she's there, she's around, and she's able to give me the business kick that I don't necessarily understand all the time because I studied nursing. And
Yeah.
when you study nursing, you don't learn about the financials and how to scale a business and the marketing and stuff. So do your research when it comes down, which is your second homework. Do your research on regards to what it is to market. And marketing is so much more fun than you think. I love it, like, when I go on social media and you're there, like, giving advice. Marketing is also education, which is something that nurses today are very good at providing. So you need to, like, use that as a marketing leverage. That is a really, really good tool. And another thing, read books. One book that I read, and don't read books about how to be a great nurse. Like, don't read about stories of nurses anymore, because the thing is that y'all know how to be a good nurse. Y'all are here because you wanna be you want to be like, you want to put yourself on a pedestal, you want to get yourself a brand and stuff. So here's the thing, you got to study the things that you don't know, which is a lot of the times finances. I
Yeah.
found the finances was the hardest thing for me to understand because my finances was managed by my person I was with at the time. So I
Mm.
read a beautiful book, Rachel Rogers.
Uh-oh,
We should
uh-oh,
all be
we should all be
millionaires.
millionaires. That's our book.
I love how you're
You
all the way
gotta read this book.
like giving the same tips that we give nurses all the time. That's starting with marketing because we think, "Oh, if we
Mhm.
build it, they'll come," and that's not true, and it's mentor marketing and reading books. That's literally what we preach about all the time, and that's our
Really?
commitment.
Oh, that's
Yes.
Literally.
hilarious.
And that is our book. That is our
And
book. That is
yeah.
our book. That is our
It is
book.
the
That's like
Yes.
book.
a ode. It's like a ode to women entrepreneurs. It's like it gives us a kick in the you know what? Like
Yeah.
you stop it. Don't change your
Yeah.
Yep.
lifestyle, make more money. Like, no, you don't need permission. Like, stop asking. Oh my gosh, we could go on and on. That's our book. Yes.
Oh,
We
for
love
sure,
it.
for sure. Another one that I read as well is Atomic Habits.
Yep.
So
Got
all
that
these
one
Mm.
little
too.
things that create new habits because you don't need to know the story of a doctor and of a nurse. You can read it for your entertainment, but you're not going to learn anything from it. If you want to
Yeah.
drive your passion, I mean, you can read them, but I mean, at the fuel it, but the one thing that you need to read to educate yourself is something that you don't know, which is
Yes.
I started with finances, and the person I contacted when I opened my business was a lawyer. I
Yeah.
did not go and I didn't just open it because it was cute. I called a lawyer because I was like, "I'm not gonna do this wrong."
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And you know what I love is that, when you like I've been in business for 6 years now, and what I've learned is that I could help anybody now. It doesn't matter if you're a nurse, doctor, engineer, layperson, business, the fundamentals don't change. I don't care what industry you're in, the principles are the same. And so
Yeah.
that is why you should read outside of nursing. You should read books that are like focused on whatever your challenge is or whatever, you got marketing, you got finances, you got delegation. Those are really the main three things that you have to focus on. Fulfillment. That's it. So I don't care if you're an online coach, if you have a brick and mortar, if you have product based business, if you have drop shipping, it all has the same core principles. And the fact that nurses, and I say nurses because that's our audience, but like I feel like we are so intimidated because we think it's just like this this abstract thing in the sky, and it's like, no, it really doesn't matter what business you get into. You don't have to be a home health nurse own business, or you don't have to open a staffing company. Like, you could sell books if you wanted to, like whatever it is that you want to do. And the bottom line is what you need to be successful will never change in business and entrepreneurship. It's the same thing. Like, I can literally read a book, marketing book from Dan Kennedy. His book is like 20 years old. It's still very relevant because he doesn't focus on trends. He focuses on the fundamentals. He focuses on core, like that does not change. So yeah, and that's exactly, what I like about Rachel Rogers is she just puts like a girl spin on it, like because she deal with a lot of the expectations, societal expectations they have on us as women, right? And limiting us. But it's still, when you peel away all the layers, the core principles are the same. You can do more, you can make more, you can earn more, you can focus on the causes that matter to you. It's all about your mind and your decisions, anything you do. So I love that. Yeah. So that was good. That was good. Those are some good assignments, you guys. So I think y'all probably heard Rachel Rogers a good 4 or 5 times since we've been
Yeah.
hosting this podcast.
For
So
sure.
if
For
you haven't
sure.
gotten it
Amazing.
yet, and we don't get no affiliation, but let me tell you, this book is worth recommending, you guys, for sure.
Yes.
And so lastly, we want to know, where can people find you, Melanie? How can they reach
Yes.
you? Like social media, websites, all that stuff.
So you guys can reach me on Instagram, info at Nomadic Nurse Agency.com is our email. You can reach us on Instagram at Nomadic Nurse Agency. And you can also reach me directly, Nurse Melanie Jade B on Instagram as well.
Yay. Thank you so much. And when are you expecting to come to move, to make the move?
I actually have a trip to Miami May 11th, so I
Okay.
will be
You'll
there
be out
for
here. Yay.
yeah,
Okay.
and I'm
Okay.
American, so that's another part. Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm gonna be
you
coming
are.
out. Yes, girl.
Yeah.
Oh, so how'd you end up in
Oh
Quebec? Okay, that's another
Yeah.
story. I'm
oh my
nosy now.
dad. That no, it's all good. No, my dad.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool, cool. Well, we
yeah,
must stay in contact. Crystal, you have any
yeah.
closing words before we
Yes, I was
let
just gonna
Melanie
say it's so
go?
wonderful, meeting you and getting to know you. You're an example of what, um, we teach, and what I always say is just use your nurse knowledge that you have right now and just look for a void in your community and just start there. That's really all. Us nurses have so much information and knowledge that we think it's normal, but, going to someone's house and cleaning their ears and giving them a vaccine is doing great work in the community, and it's something that we already have as nurses. We already know how to do it. So thank you for coming and being an example of that. We will definitely be keeping in contact with you.
And just for the
thank
record, your IG, because I was looking it up, Nomadic Nurse Agency.
yes,
Nurse Agency. Okay. No, no underscore or anything like that, right? Okay. Just want to
correct.
make sure I'm following you. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Melanie, for coming on, giving us mad value. And I love
Yes,
that, you're in Quebec, but like you talked about how this is something that can be done also in the States. And I'm sure other countries as well. And I don't think you would need a medical director in certain states. In the restricted practice states, you might have to look into that, but definitely field practice states, you probably don't. So thank you so much for that. And everybody, you guys go follow Nomadic Agency. And why I
Yes.
guess you're going to be posting your move and everything, right? Are you going to do that on your
yes,
social platform? Okay. Yeah, that's
yes.
dope. Okay. All right, cool. Well,
Mm.
thank you so much. Okay, everybody, thank you. Again, listen, if you guys have friends, family, anyone who is a nurse who is interested in starting their own business, tell them about the Nurse Boss Shift. This is where the nurse shift happens. All right. Till next
Yeah.
time. Bye.
Bye.